Lila Rosa Owen, and you, among other things, you're a first-generation Muslim born into a family of converts to Islam from the British Isles, which is still a reasonably small group of people, but increasing. And people like yourself are coming of age and beginning to have their own impact on the culture. So you have it's a web journal called Al-Qalam, QALAM.com. And you've been writing for a very long time. I think at a very early age you were recognized as having quite gifted at writing. So I think at 17 you were already in an association of journalists.
Chartered Institute.
Chartered Institute, right. So that was quite unusual. I mean, not many people at that age.
Yeah, I think they said I was the youngest.
The youngest ever.
Person,
okay, great. Well, just to start it off, I'm interested in, I mean, you've written a lot about a lot of the topics affecting British Muslims. Initially, I'm curious what your experience was like as a daughter of converts in this country, growing up in a Muslim community that's predominantly immigrant and children of immigrants, and often associate the Muslim community solely with the immigrant experience. And then your experience with the more dominant community who assume that if you wear a hijab that you must be from somewhere else or originally from somewhere else. So what was that like?
And I think in terms of identity, it was very confusing because on the one hand, you don't really feel you fit into the Muslim community either. And then you're obviously ostracized to some extent from the host community. So I think a lot of people like myself had very confusing upbringings in a way, because you don't really fit into anyone's boxes.
Which is troubling for me, because I have 5 children that are going through your experience.
I just wanted to ask you, what is your perception of Muslim women?
I believe that Muslim women follow Islam, and that they are very strict in their dress and in their belief system, that they value family life, and I can't think of anything else.
I want to take you and cuddle you and say, come to our world.
Yeah. How is your world? Tell me, do you feel that Western women have a better position than Muslim women?
I'd say so, yes.
Why do you say that?
Because of our freedom more than anything.
From what I say, we get to wear what we want, we get to work where we want, we basically get to do whatever we want at home.
Their clothes, usually. And I don't know, I think it's too different to this word, and I don't know if in my case I would like.
Do you think if someone told you that you needed to put on the veil, the same one that we wore, and you had to cover yourself up, you could do the same things that you do, go to school and everything like that, do you think you would feel restricted in some way?
I do think that, I guess in some way, I do think that perhaps people might treat me differently because I look different, I'm wearing different clothes.
I think you go through stages where you try and fit in with various different groups, and then eventually, I guess you just stop worrying about it and get on with things. But
what do you, in your writings, I mean, you focus on a lot of the Muslim issues, and what are your primary interest and concerns?
I suppose British Islam, and mainly. And then I guess women's issues inevitably come into it as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, I heard that you do a lot of work on the issues of polygamy.
It was mainly to do with attitudes that people have.
What did you find, basically?
A real mix, actually, quite an interesting mix. A lot of people are obviously very apprehensive about it, very condemnatory. Particularly from certain countries. But then I spoke to a lot of Nigerians who were very open to it. So I think it did come down to cultural
In fact, Muslims in Nigeria are conservative polygynists because in the the Igbo community and other Nigerian communities, they marry often
Sure.
more than 4.
Yeah.
More than 4.
Yeah.
And it's, yeah, exactly, it's not just a Muslim phenomenon in many
Why
African
were you
countries.
interested in it? Because, I mean, I understand that here in Britain anyways, it's not an issue really, is it?
It's becoming an issue.
How?
You have a lot of converts, usually very young women.
And they're not protected by law, obviously,
Yeah.
correct? So how does that work?
So you get all sorts of varying practices and obviously all sorts of abuses as
A
well.
lot of abuses. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen personally a lot of really troubling abuses. I mean, there's a lot of people that have married in the U.S. for green cards.
Sure, exactly.
The women actually convert quite seriously to Islam, and then when the husband gets the green card, they're literally dumped. And it's quite devastating because this person's been, you know, expressing love and care and concern, and then the day the green card arrives in the mail, suddenly the personality changes. There are, unfortunately, it is sad, but the victim is not just the woman in that case, but Islam itself is the victim, because Islam is often used as a kind of justification.
What do you think about the issue of polygamy in Islam?
I don't agree with it. I don't agree with polygamy. I don't agree with having more than... No, it's not right.
Well, as in, I think if the woman doesn't mind, then it's absolutely fine. If I was put in the situation, I don't think I'd be too happy about it. But if you agree to it, then I think it's absolutely fine.
I believe in the classical notion that everybody was born as half of a sphere and they go around trying to find their soulmate. And I don't believe that you can find more than one person that you're intended to be with. And I don't know if I'm a traditional kind of person or if I'm conventional as such, but
well, it just
I think you should
point of
exactly
our conceptions of marriage.
And I believe
it's a choice.
Exactly,
but
exactly.
It's not how we were raised to view marriage, because you know, marriage for us is about 2 people, not 8.
Yeah. One of the major problems really in the UK is that people are just not brought up with that much knowledge, and so you find a lot of people who may have opinions and may want to contribute them, but they don't really feel confident enough to do that because they don't feel This is Muslim women? Yeah, and men as well. And you see that a lot, I think. They don't really feel that their opinion is valid because they don't have the knowledge.
It's not based on the Quran or the Sunnah. And then another problem is that the tradition is a tradition that really does give guidance for very specific things, and it gets quite detailed. And even though there are varying opinions about that, what invariably happens with that is that these tools begin to be used as forms of oppression. You know, can I ask you, just in growing up in a Muslim household, and probably as you came of age, realizing, one, your society was entirely different from the worldview that you'd been given by your parents. Did you go through a dark night of the soul? Did you?
Yeah, I think everyone does up to a point. Probably when I was at university, you know, you do a lot of soul searching there anyway. And it is a confusing time because you realize you get on better with your non-Muslim colleagues perhaps than your Muslim colleagues for whatever reason. You know, I mean, you perhaps read too much into it at the time, but and then eventually I did get distracted by that world of parties and all the rest of it. But then you realize that there's just no substance in it, and I began looking for something with
deeper,
more meaning.
Yeah.
So, and eventually, after various phases or whatever, I sort of ended up in a place where I was comfortable with who I am. But yeah, I think inevitably you do go through that, especially in the West.
In a recent Gallup poll that was done, and there was actually a Muslim involved in it, they found that all over the world that optimism was directly related to socioeconomic status. The higher the people were in their standards of living, the more optimism there were. The Muslim countries were the only countries that broke that rule. They found that, yes, they were the only ones. And they were quite struck by that fact, that the Muslims, in spite of living in the worst type of conditions, were actually very optimistic. And they attribute it directly to a faith that inculcates optimism. But I want to thank you very much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks. It's a pleasure.
And inshallah, Allah give you tawfiq in your work.
Thank you.